Hi there. In this tutorial, you will learn how to integrate with an external system and use that system to configure your record type's data source. Before we start, let's take a high-level look at what we want to build. By the end of this tutorial, you will have a record type with event planning data from an external system called SeatGeek. The record type will use a connected system and an integration object as its data source, connecting to SeatGeek's web API. Let's quickly contrast integrations and web APIs. The integration object is used when you want Appian to call an API in an external system. Appian can use integrations to query for or modify data in those systems. To build this, you start by creating a connected system which stores that external system's basic details, base URL, and authentication information. In addition, the integration object further maps out the exact URL path, method for requesting data, and other details about how to get the data you want and how to format it. The Appian Web API, on the other hand, is used when an external system initiates a call to Appian. This can be used to create, read, update, or delete a record, as well as to kick off an Appian process. In this tutorial, we will use a connected system and integration to call SeatGeek's Web API. SeatGeek is a live entertainment platform where customers can purchase tickets to events. We are going to connect to one of their web APIs and return some of those events. Now that we know what we are building, let's get started. First, I will create a new record type named SeatGeek Event and give it a description. The record type security looks good, so I will click Save. Next, I can start setting up the data model. For the data source type, I'll select Web Service. I'll leave Data Sync enabled and click Next. When I click the Create Record Data Source link, Appian's forward flow will help me create the connected system and integration objects I need, as well as an expression rule to help me format the data I get back. I'll get started with these three objects now. Since I don't already have a connected system, I'll click Create Connected System. Appian has multiple templates to help you create the connected system. Many times, including now, we will use the HTTP option. Since this Appian object is storing information about SeatGeek, I will call it SeatGeek and add a description. Next, I can add an image that represents this connected system. It is helpful to upload this image because it will display and process models on integrations that connect to the system. Next, I need to add the base URL. Any integration created from this connected system will inherit its base URL. The designer can use this base URL together with a relative path to construct the full URL for an integration. The base URL of any system you are trying to connect to should be found in its documentation. I will copy the base URL in SeatGeek's documentation and paste it into my base URL field. Lastly, I need to set up this system's authentication. Appian supports many authentication types, and you should be able to find the type you need in the external system's documentation. In this case, the API supports basic authentication, so I need to select that authentication type from the dropdown. Using the SeatGeek documentation website, I can generate the username and password credentials I need. Be careful not to lose these credentials, as many systems will only generate this one time. If you do lose it, you may have to generate new credentials. Now the connected system is set up, and I can click Create. Next, I am going to set up the basic details of my integration and expression rule. Appian will then generate those objects for me, and I can modify them in accordance with the API. Notice that as I am naming the integration object, I can see it is using the SeatGeek connected system I just set up. I will continue on and name the integration, give it a description, and save it to my integrations folder. Then I will click Next and update the details of the expression rule. The purpose of this rule is to call the integration and transform the response into a data subset. One last thing before I modify the integration and expression rule. Since the record data source does not return more than 1,000 records per call, I'll leave syncing in batches selected. This means I will get records back in batches until all of the data I request is returned. After I click Create, I can modify the integration and expression rule Appian just generated for me. I will start by opening the integration object and make some updates. First, I will update the relative path field. I'll reference the SeatGeek documentation and locate the relative path. Then I will copy and paste it into the relative path field. The base URL and relative path together will tell this integration object exactly where to go to connect to the data I need. Next, I need to choose an option for the method. There are multiple options including get to return data from the external system, post to write data to it, delete to remove data from it, as well as other options. I'll leave the method as get since we want to return data from SeatGeek, and that is what their documentation calls for. Here, I will pause and click Test Results to make sure I can connect to SeatGeek's system. I see the success banner in the results pane confirming that I was able to call the system. Below that, I am going to click the Convert JSON to Appian Value option. When I click Test Request again, I can see the more familiar Appian values. Looking further down, I see several different events. Since I don't need all of this data, I will add some query parameters so I only get back the data I want. Query parameters will look at data fields that are appended to the end of the URL and determine how the external system responds. First, I only want to query for events in a specific state. Let's just say Illinois for this example. You should be able to find the correct format for name and value in the API's documentation. Here we can see that the name should be venue.state, and the value should be a state's 2-letter abbreviation. I'll also add 2 more parameters related to pagination, per page and page. These parameters are important because remember, we won't be able to return all of the data with a single call. Here, I want to pull 50 records per page from the external system. And the last parameter, page, is related to the page number. Appian will use the batch number rule input. Now I can click Save Changes and close the integration. Next, let's take a quick look at the expression rule. As a reminder, the expression rule will call the integration and format the return data. The expression has helpful comments to guide you through modifications you might want to make. For example, I can add this other rule I created earlier and modify the expression so I only get back the data I care about. You can update your expression rules to format the data to meet your needs. Notice the comments will also point out other updates you might want to make, like what to do when handling an unsuccessful call. To learn more about this, consider taking the Integration Learning Path at Academy Online. For now, I will save the expression rule and close it. I will go back to the dialog showing me the integration and expression rule objects. I'll click OK and finish reviewing my record type's data source. I'll set the primary key as the ID field, then click Finish. When I click Save Changes, the record type is saved and sync is initiated. When the sync is complete, I can see all of the events I pulled from SeatGeek. Now I can use this record data throughout my application. Nice work! In this video, you learned how to integrate with an external system and use that system to configure your record type's data source. Have a question about this video? Comment below. Don't forget to check out the description for more learning resources, and for more videos like this one, like and subscribe. Great work, and I'll see you in the next one.